The world of Teen Titans has many compelling and complex ideas surrounding each hero. Some were nastier than others, while some even broke the law or their own moral codes to satisfy their own personal desires. An action of this nature typically falls under the umbrella of villainy. On the flip side of this note, there are villains in this specific world who have shown to have a heart underneath their twisted and corrupted intentions. Today we'll find out who secretly has a heart of gold and who lives up to their horribly wicked name. I'm Kifinosi from Wicked Binge, and this is Teen Titans Villains, least evil to most evil. Before we begin, there are a few rules that we should address. Since there were so many villains for this list that were taken into consideration, we had to make things clear. First, the villain has to show awareness of their choices to justify their actions as evil. We mean that the villains have to actively mean harm to the people around them, on more than just an instinct to protect themselves. Therefore, creatures like the one from Separated may not be counted. Second, the villain has to be significant enough in the series to be included. And lastly, we're going off of the animated series alone, so comic book origins and other adaptations will not be included. With that said, let's jump into the fray, starting with the purest, least evil villain on the list, before we descend to the most evil. Starting us off, for the least evil of all, and what may seem like an odd choice, we're going with Brushogun, Tokyo's first supervillain. Originally, he was a regular artist who desired to bring his work to life. Using Japanese dark magic, his ambition proved fruitful, but he paid a hefty price. His skin became paper, his blood became ink, and his mind most likely became unstable. Hence why he was to become a villain. However, during his appearance in the movie, he uses his powers to draw the Titans to Japan. True, he did have to cause some minor damage to their city and a lot of damage to their tower to get their attention, but there was no genuine malice in his actions. In fact, it was revealed that Brushogun was desperate for their help in defeating the real villain of Tokyo. More on him later. Brushogun does whatever he can to help the Titans escape the real threat, especially when Robin is framed and on his way to prison. When the battle's finally won, Brushogun is grateful for their help, as seen by the peace on his face before his story ends. Pun intended. He may have started out as a villain, but still, Brushogun giving up his life to stop a truly evil man not only saved the Titans in an hour of need, but an entire city of innocents as well. For a supposed villain, that was pretty heroic. For our second placement of redeemed villains, we've chosen Jinx. On the battlefield, Jinx uses hex spells to bring misfortune to her enemies. Furthermore, she proves to be a capable fighter, using acrobatic moves to counterattack her opponents. Due to her power of misfortune, Jinx believes that her talents didn't prove hopeful for anything other than evil intentions. This is why for most of the series, she's a member of the Hive 5 and a student at Hive Academy. While she attends school, Jinx shows to be an average teenager. She values teamwork during battle and keeps her friends out of trouble in front of their superiors. However, she also pulls pranks on her group and gets annoyed at them on occasion, which are all expected behaviors for a teen. Even her occasional rebellion of stealing or fighting on a whim is average behavior for her age group. However, her biggest moment of morality shines in the episode Lightspeed. In this episode, Jinx tries desperately to capture Kid Flash in an attempt to impress her idol, Madame Rouge, and to gain approval from the Brotherhood of Evil. So much so that she's really the only one in her team that pushes for this goal. Eventually, she tires of her team and tries on her own, which proves to be successful. Shockingly, she decides to turn on Madame Rouge, allowing Kid Flash to escape. In this moment, Jinx realizes that her powers can be used for more than just villainy. The next time we see her, she's not only allied with Kid Flash, but turns on her former team and even helps the Titans to defeat the Brotherhood of Evil. By the end of the battle and the series, she stands among the Titans as a fellow hero. It seems that her bad luck streak has finally turned good. Now, this next guy may be a controversial choice, but we're choosing to put Red X in the next spot. The new owner of the Red X suit stole it from Robin and uses the suit to steal what he wants, namely the chemical needed to power the suit itself. He doesn't fight for good nor evil. He's simply looking after his own needs, which is made clear in the episode Revved Up, where he tries everything he can think of to win Robin's briefcase for a profit. He has no problem attacking the team and making them attack each other in the process. That being said, he also does quite a bit of good in his own right as well. He's not after power, control, and doesn't intend to harm the city. He's just a thief who fights anyone that gets in his way. But his biggest moments of good come from Revved Up and X. In the first episode mentioned, Red X pays Robin back for saving him by sabotaging the other racers, so he has a better shot at winning his case back. And in the second episode, Red X and Robin work together to save the city and the other Titans from certain doom by Professor Chang. Even though he doesn't like to play the hero, Red X would definitely be an asset on the team if he were to ever change his mind. With the mention of a morality tune-up, Punk Rocket would have been perfect for striking a chord with. This rocker appears very sparingly in the show, however, he leaves with a noticeable impression. First, with the interruption of a classical performance, he apparently hates the way the music sounds compared to his own melodies. He loves the sound of chaos, and uses his guitar to, quite literally, knock the crowd out of their seats. The sound waves are so powerful that Cyborg is rendered useless and shocked beyond repair, pun fully intended. While crashing a concert is a juvenile thing for any teenager to do, his involvement with the Brotherhood of Evil is a more noticeable sign of true villainy. As a villain, he definitely enjoys what he does, but considering this guy is just a youngster who really loves rock and roll, perhaps there's hope for him one day. Just kidding, his end is so chilling to say the least. Speaking of a villain changing their ways, loving Mother May I herself is next on the list. Honestly, this villain acts more like a real mother than a threat. She treats the Titans like her own children, dressing them, feeding them, taking care of them, and even cleaning out their own noses. Ew. She's such a protective mother that she even beats the snot out of the Hive students during their fight with the team in the middle of the mall, for crying out loud. All of these acts of kindness are characteristics of any loving mother. That's why she is such an effective villain. Her uncanny sense of manipulation is terrifying. Her pies act as a kind of hypnotic spell over the team. She restricts their powers by changing their appearances, such as putting Beast Boy in a bunny outfit or Starfire in a sweater. Her truly evil deeds come from the malicious cookie army that she creates to find the fight, and the mere fact that she would turn the Titans into a pie by the end of the episode. It makes you wonder what exactly is in the other pies that this witch in disguise has made throughout the show. On second thought, never mind. For the most part, this evildoer was actually a very good mother. If only she had different taste, then she may have been left off of this list entirely. While we're on the subject of taste, let's talk about a guy who has quite a disgusting one, to say the least. We're of course talking about Plasmis. Before everyone starts going crazy in the comment section about why this villain is in the least evil section of the list, hear us out first. Plasmis may be a villain that we see a lot of in this series, and he does cause quite a bit of destruction as a result. However, his primary interest is simply consuming green-colored waste, presumably toxic waste. Outside of that interest, though, he is never seen attacking anyone in the series unless they've attacked him first. This comes with the exceptions of being under Slade's control and the final battle where this creature's seen giving Trident a hand and taking down Aqualad. More on those two villains later. So, generally speaking, Plasmis seems to act more on a simple desire for consumption than anything else. In fact, when we do see him in his human form, this side of him fully understands why it's necessary for him to literally sleep his life away, as the man states, "I should never be awake. I'm only human when I'm sleeping." Talk about the luck of the draw. This villain must have one creepy backstory, to say the least. Up next on the chopping block is our next blockhead himself, Cinderblock. Much like with Plasmis, the only times we ever see Cinderblock act violently or aggressively is either while fighting the police or the Titans themselves. But considering he's supposed to be a villain, this is appropriate. And as Gerald puts it, the guy has bricks for brains. Hence, it is safe to say that there isn't much going on upstairs, especially when you consider that Cinderblock is usually taking orders from Slade or the Brotherhood of Evil. Otherwise, he isn't really harming innocent people, nor planning anything hostile himself. He's just a henchman overall. So his acts are evil, however, on most occasions, he's not acting on his own desires. It makes you wonder what he does on his days off. If he does anything at all, that is. Allow us to shed some light on these placements as we introduce our next villain, Dr. Light. For a guy who wants to flood the city into never-ending daylight, this guy isn't too bright himself. Unless Raven gets involved in the fight, then he makes the smart move of surrendering immediately. For the most part, this guy's worst crimes have involved theft, robbery, and resisting arrest, all of which are relatively petty to say the least. The only exception comes from the episode Coal. In this episode, the Doctor adds kidnapping to his resume, as he wants to use coal as the energy source for his machine-powered suit, which works to his benefit during his fight with the Titans. But as the old saying goes, all good things must come to an end, as Cyborg and Narc make quick work out of tearing his new invention apart. Lesson to be learned here: don't ever steal a caveman's best friend, especially when said girl can become a living weapon herself. All we can say to that is, ouch! Call this an odd choice, but we're going to put Fang next. This guy, if you want to call him that, is more of a petty thief and a delinquent who doesn't mind paralyzing superheroes, both of which do knock him down a few pegs. However, ironically, his love and devotion to his psychopathic girlfriend, more on her later, make him a true bad guy. He's willing to do anything to make her happy, even going so far as to steal an apology present and help her settle her grudge with Robin on more than one occasion. Fang may not be a good person, but he does have a heart underneath his strange surface. Or does he? Hybrids. Now, the next set of villains consists of Kid Wicked, Hive Soldier, Seymour, and Mammoth, otherwise known as the Hive 5. Now, the team does change its lineup every so often, but still, these 4 are consistent, so we're looping them all together, especially since their villainous actions can be sorted out in very similar ways. These guys mostly steal anything that catches their eyes and cause minor fits of harm to those they come across, heroes or innocents, respectively. At least until the final battle between good and evil, that is. Surprisingly, the group took part in a battle, seeing as the only one who showed interest in fighting was Jinx, who was no longer a member of the team at this point, but we're getting off track. Basically, all these villains attacked and separated Titans to weaken their numbers, then joined in the final brawl, which ended with a rather chilling conclusion for the villains. The unfortunate reality here is that most of these guys had redeemable qualities to them. They each showed moments of caring for their allies and working with them to overcome the obstacles put in their lines of sight. And given that these guys were only teenagers, it's not out of the question to say that their better natures could have made an appearance later in the series, kind of like their former teammate Jinx. At this point, one can only imagine. With that, we round off our least evil who could have done better for themselves at one point or another, but we're going to tackle some of the more sinister villains upon this list, some of which may be more shocking than others. And speaking of shocks, our first villain in this section of the list is none other than Overload. This guy's basically just a walking power plant who steals energy from anything electronic based, including Cyborg and his beloved car. The most powerful quality about this villain is the size of his ego, since he believes that his non-biological nature gives him the right to do as he pleases. This walking lightning rod has no sense of remorse and cares nothing for the distress his actions cause others, which is why this baddie took over Cyborg's car to escape capture. Overload is definitely a villain by nature, but his greatest use comes from being turned into a hollow floppy disk upon defeat, which happens quite a lot given his current track record. I wonder how big that ego of his is now. Let's plug him in and find out. Now, there's no telling what the future holds, especially when it comes to our next villain in line, the time traveler thief, Warp. This villain literally travels back in time 100 years just to steal an artifact of a clock. Apparently, since the clock disappeared by his time, his need to steal the clock was justified. All this character serves as is a walking ego trip that truly believes in his own philosophies way too much to care about the consequences of his actions. As the Titans prove, history can be changed if the individual involved makes an effort to change things for the better, or in this case, the worse. And seeing as he becomes a baby 20 years after his fight with the Titans due to his own time-traveling suit, this lesson definitely speaks volumes. He did indeed know the Titans' strengths and weaknesses inside and out due to being from the future, but how did this guy appear in the final battle between good and evil if he was stuck as a baby 20 years in the future? My head hurts thinking about it. And coincidentally, the next villain on our list is quite a mischievous little brat in his own right. We are, of course, referring to the loudmouth tech whiz of the Hive 5, Gizmo. First and most obviously, Gizmo runs his mouth as much as any of his inventions, being rude, insulting, and disrespectful to anyone he happens to come across. Furthermore, he attacks his enemies with bullets, bolts of electricity, rockets, and even hacked machines, including Cyborg, basically doing his fighting for him. He also uses his hacking skills to steal by disarming security systems, rigging ATMs, and taking control of cars, which gives his team a big score at the banks, as well as jewelry and electronic stores in town. Since he is quite the tech master, his tricks also involve holograms, force fields, and downloading illegal games to play. On that note, let's bring up the episode Crash. Gizmo does show some level of decency when he destroys a virus probe aiming for Beast Boy. He also does warn the guy to run when Cyborg's human body tries to attack them, but this small act of good is quickly overshadowed by the rest of his actions. He gives up at the viral core and plans to shut Cyborg down permanently, which thankfully fails. His only other good moments come from his ability to work well with his team, his efforts to show manners in the Hive cafeteria, and his attempts to keep Stone out of trouble. So these acts don't really score him too high on the redemption meter, as he's later shown to be jealous of Stone. He also opens up his mouth about the race over Robin's case, which causes 10 other racers to join in trying to obtain the hero's personal possession, which was stolen from the start, by the way. Out of his team, he's definitely the most rotten, and he deserves to be mentioned separately from his remaining teammates. Though, to be frank, if it weren't for his involvement in the final battle, maybe he would have had a better placement overall on this list. Since we're on the topic of villains who like messing with Cyborg in particular, this would be a good time to bring up the robot menace himself, Atlas. On the outside, this robot believes that he is superior and is willing to do anything to prove that. He challenges Cyborg to a real fight after losing in a video game, and kidnaps the other Titans after the first round of their fight. He does give Cyborg a chance to rest before a proper fight, but still, even after the robot loses, Atlas refuses to let the other Titans go free, keeping them as trophies, and claiming there was nothing Cyborg could do about it. Furthermore, he's a sore loser, clearly, who doesn't mind cheating to get ahead in a fight, like using a power cord to shock Cyborg during their fight. Atlas also proves to be a bully as well. He treats his mechanic like trash, using scare tactics to get him to obey his orders, and constantly commands him like a slave, even using violence against him. But as Robin explains, you're the one who fixes him, you're his strength. Without you, he's nothing, and he knows it. Which turns out to be the case. When he admits defeat to Cyborg, he's left alone in a ditch to take care of his own repairs. Though let's be honest, he did deserve that fate. What makes Atlas a true villain is the fact that he just refuses to learn his lesson and better himself. As a result, he's seen helping the Brotherhood of Evil take down the Titans, starting with Pantha. Like I said, sore loser. Now let's talk about an odd villain, to say the least. Kataro, the martial arts master. From what we've seen of him, this villain is more or less your average thief. He steals, he cheats, and he lies to get ahead of the competition. He talks a big game, thinking he's better than his opponent, like during his fight with Robin in the antique shop. Still, because of his want to have an edge to get ahead, he tricks Robin into finding the true master, so this villain could be at full strength when he himself challenges the master. Even after Kataro refuses to give up and uses Robin's stolen weapons to try and get his way, the true master puts this bad guy in his proper place, right at the bottom of the mountain. Just goes to show you, if you want something done, you should do it the right way yourself. Next up, we have Adonis. To be frank, this guy is just plain pathetic. He acts all high and mighty, but truthfully, that's all it is, an act. This is clearer when the team discovers that his strength comes from the robotic suit he wears. He's an arrogant male figure who enjoys terrorizing local beaches and gives off a new level of creepy towards Raven. In fact, when he's turned into a monster by chemical mutation, he targets the magic user of the team specifically. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that he was recruited by the Brotherhood of Evil, this guy would have been placed in a completely different spot, preferably a much lower one. This time, the city's local bad boy, Johnny Rancid, comes right up on the chopping block. This guy's a street punk who's obsessed with power himself and causing pain. In fact, he has no problem openly mocking his opponents, especially Robin, and putting innocent lives in danger just for his own sick kicks. His determination to do so is so massive that he willingly jumps into a reality-bending vortex to get control over the entire city. Though that may be the worst thing he's ever done, he quickly loses his edge and his cool when Robin regains his confidence and doesn't take him seriously. When everything is said and done, it's clear that this guy is nothing more than a bully who needs to get a reality check. Speaking of getting a good dose of reality, the team sure pulled a fast one on our next villain, Billy Numerous. This guy is all over the place, literally. Since he can make so many copies of himself at once, he can escape the Titans with all the things he stole in his first appearance. This includes robbing multiple banks, jewelry stores, gold bars, electronics, Cyborg's car, and even an entire bridge. Not joking. That is, until Cyborg outsmarts this rebellious troublemaker, which isn't saying much since he only has one thing on his mind, himself. He demonstrates this by wrecking a little kid's hockey game, and there is a beatdown that happens in this process. Billy's self-interest attitude also applies to other evildoers, such as the Hive Academy or the Brotherhood of Evil, despite helping both organizations in their causes. Regardless though, at the end of the day, this guy's only interested in taking care of number one, which is himself in his world, unless he is fighting with himself, in which case there would be no clear winner. The amazing evil-doing maestro of magic, Mumbo Jumbo, is the next villain on our list. We suppose at one point this guy could have been a decent person, since he looks an awful lot like an orchestra director in one of the episodes of the show, but now the only good thing this guy has to offer is his laugh. Granted, he uses every magic trick in the book that he can to get the better of the Titans, and having a spare hand up his sleeve, or such as bombs, ribbons up his sleeves, cards, a saw in a box, and having a spare hand up his sleeve, or many in this case. He also brings things to life and changes other objects to give him the upper hand in his mountain load of battles. And as far as his actions reflect, his biggest crimes include theft of jewelry, robbing banks, trying to make the Titans permanently disappear, and assisting the Brotherhood of Evil. Honestly, sucking the Titans into his hat and using them as performers in his act was about the biggest trick Mumbo could have done in the show. And even that proved useless, as Raven outperformed him easily. Regardless of his cunning attitude or skilled practices, his magic act is just as bad as he is. He isn't the worst of the villains, but he is nowhere near the top. Maybe stick to your day job, Mumbo, you might have more luck, and be better at it. Touching upon another magical creature, we have Malchior. Now, this villain is definitely a cunning one to say the least. Not only does he take full advantage of the fact that Raven is vulnerable from her loneliness, he also takes his time to be patient with her to gain her trust, which works to great extremes. Raven trusts him enough to learn new magic and feel a sense of happiness from this villain. Unfortunately, there's a sour note there. He manipulates her into thinking that the magic she's learning is simply misunderstood, even though the magic almost harms a girl already in trouble when Raven tries to help her. Can we really blame the guy though? He's been trapped in a book for 1,000 years? His desperation would be clear to anyone in his shoes. Regardless of that fact, however, Malchior is 100% a villain through and through, as he reveals his wicked demeanor during his episode's climax, and during the final battle between good and evil. He's seen trying to target the kids that Raven has grown attached to, twice. Sounds like someone doesn't know how to let go of the past. Then again, some people just never learn their lesson. The next villain on our list is the Puppet King. Aside from being a good craftsman, this puppet is nothing but trouble. Using a magical remote, he transfers the souls of Cyborg, Robin, and Beast Boy into wooden replicas of themselves to gain control of their bodies. From his dialogue, it's clear that he plans to use the mindless Titans to take over the city. Thanks to Raven's quick thinking, his plan does fail. However, it's pretty sinister when you realize that this puppet was willing to destroy the real Titans' souls to gain control of them forever. But considering the mindless Titans were rather useless in battle, we don't think this plan would have worked regardless. What is puzzling to note though is the Puppet King does play a part in the final conflict during the end of the series. How exactly this is possible is a loophole that we'll not bother trying to explain. Since he is there, he had the same ill intent as the other villains involved. That's all we need to know for why he holds this spot on our list. Moving on to our next baddie, we have Trident. There's just one way to describe this guy. Self-centered. He's so arrogant that he believes himself to be perfect, which he believes gives him the right to do anything he wants. From attacking a ship carrying toxic waste and innocent sailors, crashing the Titan's water ship, and becoming the worst criminal of Atlantis, to name a few of his misdeeds. His entire goal is to clone an army of himself so that he may conquer the whole world to show his superiority. Thankfully, this scheme does backfire on him as his clones fight and argue over which of them is the best, giving Beast Boy and Aqualad the perfect opening for a counterattack. He did get some vengeance on Aqualad during the final fight, however that doesn't speak too greatly in the grand scheme of things, especially since the self-proclaimed perfection tag-teamed with one of the grossest entries on this list. If you've been paying attention, we're sure you know who we're talking about. While we're on the topic of arrogant madmen, it would be a crime not to mention Mad Mod. This guy is a level of crazy with very few parallels on this list. Honestly, how many villains in their right minds would fill the hero's tower with knockout gas? He also builds special chairs to combat their powers and creates an entire school to re-educate them to show proper respect to the villains that the team is supposed to stop. Only one other contender, but we'll talk about him later. The school Mod builds is set up with traps, bombs, and hypno screens designed to get the Titans to behave in one way or another. To be frank, Mod doesn't really have room to talk, since his actions and behavior are far worse than the Titans themselves, which is ironic in its own right. He's simply a man full of himself, as he claims that since he's older, he's better. That fact alone is enough of a reason why he should call the shots. Sure. The point is driven home when Mod brainwashes the entire city to believe that the revolution and the birth of America never happened. This means that the British are still in control of the continent in question. Thus, everyone, including Beast Boy, turn British. And who better to rule this new city than Mod himself? Especially since the Mad Brit ends up stealing Robin's youth and unleashes a robotic army to destroy the rest of the Titans. Realistically, the only good thing about this guy is perhaps his humor and words of wisdom, which Starfire uses to full advantage. Besides that, kick this guy to the curb because his days are up. Onto an oddball in the villain world. We'll call attention to the nerdy fanboy himself, Control Freak. When we say fanboy, we're not kidding. This guy could go on and on about how cool he thinks the Titans are as a whole. That doesn't stop him from causing the team a fair amount of trouble, though. In fact, his biggest moments of mayhem come from the episodes Don't Touch That Dial and For Real. In the first episode, Control decides to not only escape prison, but escape reality as well. On top of that, this freak decided it would be a good idea to turn every TV system into a brainwashing device during his broadcast time on the big screen. It's a plan that ends up in failure, by the way, thanks to the Titans getting involved. In the second episode mentioned, Control Freak sets up an entire challenge dedicated to testing the capabilities of each Titan. Each test puts the city in danger in its own right. Unfortunately for the villain in question, Titans East puts an end to the test rather quickly. So much for that plan. Quite frankly, this guy would be better off as a Titan than a villain because his biggest saving grace is the humor he provides for the audience. He and Beast Boy definitely seem to have a lot in common, actually. He's overall not as threatening a villain as he makes himself out to be, since most of his plans end up in complete failure. His biggest crimes primarily involve taking things that don't belong to him and trying to scramble the brains of an entire city. His biggest moment of posing an actual threat comes from learning fictional fighting forms to better his chances against the team at the end of the episode. His first episode appearance shows his power of turning objects, including candy, into fighting minions. Though, you gotta love how stupid this guy can sometimes be. Who else would zap themselves right in front of his enemies in a moment of pure excitement? Now we have Killer Moth, a surprisingly caring villain on our list. This guy's main goal is to take control of the city, and he's willing to threaten anyone in his way to do so. Well, anyone except for his daughter, who is, by the way, a total spoiled brat. More on her very soon. Still, he tries to be a supportive and loving father to her. Hell, he even lets her call the shots during several of the villainous schemes both of them take part in, like taking Starfire out in an attempt to thin out numbers for the final battle. Speaking of Starfire though, Killer Moth and the young alien also played a significant role in determining the path of Silky's life. Whereas Starfire loves the tiny worm creature, it's rather out of character for a villain to try and use an affectionate approach to win over the little slug. However, Killer Moth refers to all of the moths he keeps in his basement as his children. Gotta say though, he's definitely an abusive father figure more to Silky than to his daughter. Still, given the difference between his children, this does make sense in some ways. If only he didn't encourage his children to eat the entire city to gain power and control over the people and the Titans, then perhaps he would be much lower on this list. Moving along the disturbing family tree, let's touch upon the spoiled brat in question, Kitten. From her very first appearance, it's clear that she always gets her way, even when it comes to her villainous father. Unlike her father though, Kitten has no redeeming qualities. Fresh off the heels of a bad breakup, she expects her dad to find her a date for prom to show up her ex. She goes so far as to blackmail Robin and get him to follow her orders at her prom. From complimenting her dress to getting him to kiss her, even threatening to destroy the entire city unless Robin kisses her. Kitten is the definition of spoiled, as she unleashes a herd of killer moths upon the city just because Starfire ruined her dress. Afterwards, she swears vengeance against Robin just for breaking up with her. Hence, the next time we see her, she follows in her father's footsteps and becomes a true villain to the franchise. Like father, like daughter. The only good thing, if you can call it that, is the fact that she literally dates a guy with the spider head. Though given her family, that taste could have potentially been from her mother. Wonder exactly how that worked out. You know what, on second thought, we don't want to know. Moving on. Now let's touch on a villain that most definitely has a few screws loose in his head. Professor Chang. Granted, this guy can act like a feeble, cowardly old man when he needs to, but that's only to cover up his sinister nature. In truth, he's quite dangerous. Knowledge is power, and this guy has plenty of it. In fact, his involvement indirectly causes the creation of Red X due to the chemical that he gives Robin for his suit, the creation of Red Star, and the horrible mutated being that nearly wiped out the young hero's home entirely. He's also the one in charge of freezing the Titans during the final conflict. It's also worth mentioning that he blackmails Robin by kidnapping his teammates to keep him at bay. At the same time, the crazy professor uses a deadly cannon to destroy the city the heroes charge themselves with protecting. If this guy really desires to be bad, then we would say he was bad enough to end up here on this list at least. Our next entry is actually a duo. Meet Craw and his faithful witch. In the beginning, Craw acts like a brave warrior who wants recognition from his tribe, which is a fair thing for a warrior to want. However, Craw wants more than just to be recognized. He wants glory over anything else, and he goes to great lengths to try to achieve that glory. He willingly puts his people in the line of danger twice. He tries so hard to make Cyborg look like a loser when the robotic team first joins the battle. He ultimately tries to destroy him due to anger and humiliation toward his own shortcomings. Craw intends to conquer the tribe he's supposed to be protecting, calling up a monstrous army from the grounds below to do his bidding. What makes this guy's actions all the worse is the fact that he blames the witch for all the mishaps that are taking place. Quite the contrary though, he was the one who woke her up from an eternal slumber, so these circumstances were no doubt Craw's doing. Considering she calls him master, he controls these actions more than she does. However, it's clear that she does add some misfortune with these acts. You know what they say about making a deal with the devil, don't you? Well, apparently the same can be said for a witch. You can't get something for nothing, so when he commands more power from her, she turns him into a monster. Literally. Next, we're finally going to touch on a villain that Starfire knows all too well, Blackfire. Blackfire started out as a likable character and a potential ally to the Titans, since she is clearly a gifted fighter with knowledge and charisma to boot. However, that charisma quickly becomes a problem as her behavior becomes more suspicious. For one, Blackfire openly brags about herself and her accomplishments while ignoring advice and concerns from Starfire, which shows a rather arrogant side to her character. Second, she's always commanding the action of the room, not with words but with her forceful presence, such as charming the other Titans and constantly dragging Robin away from Starfire whenever he tries to talk to her. These actions may seem minor, however, Starfire is nearly arrested in her palace after Blackfire gives her an item of great importance that was stolen from another planet. She also openly lies when facing the enemy drones head-on. When you think about these, her earlier actions start to make more sense. Clearly, Blackfire has no problem stealing and blaming her sister regardless of what the consequences are in the process. As a way of getting even, Blackfire's act of revenge after breaking out of prison is to take over their home planet and trick Starfire into marrying a groom to prevent an invasion. An invasion which isn't even happening. By the way, it was a way for Blackfire to get back at her sister and to gain more power for herself. Jeez, and she accuses Starfire of being a traitor. You might want to look in a mirror for that one. We already know that this next entry is going to cause an uproar in the comments, but before anything is said, hear us out first. This baddie, who maybe surprisingly misses out on being the very worst of the worst on this list, is none other than Deathstroke himself, Slade. Compared to all the other villains left to go, Slade's track record has the most redeemable qualities to him. But first let's touch on his more sinister actions. In the past, he did commit some horrible stunts. One of the worst was blackmailing Robin to become his apprentice. Slade even went so far as to set up a fake plan to stop time just to infect the other Titans with cell-killing probes, and ordered Robin to attack his friends if the teen didn't follow his orders. In addition, this isn't even the only time that Slade tries to force a Titan to become his apprentice, since he later tries to turn Terra to his side as well. But at least both times end in disaster on his end. Anyway, Slade's biggest quality is his ability to manipulate those around him to do his bidding by any means necessary. This is seen countless times through the Hive Academy students, Cinderblock, Overload, Plasmis, as well as Thunder and Lightning. This trait is even seen having a big effect on Beast Boy, who can't accept the new Terra, and Raven, who tries everything she can think of to escape her birth purpose. It is clear from the start that Slade is menacing and self-centered, with an ambition to control and use everyone around him for his own gain, no matter how much pain or misfortune occurs in the process. But, like we mentioned earlier, Slade isn't the worst of the villains. He does have his redeeming moments. From the start of the series, Slade always gave praise and a sort of encouragement towards the Titans in his own way. It's almost as if he were secretly trying to help them improve themselves with each encounter the two sides were pulled into, particularly with Robin and Terra. With his first apprentice, Slade's true intention wasn't to get rid of the Titans. He wanted Robin to be his student. Even when Robin was on the verge of death from the cell-killing probes inside his body, Slade refused to let the boy die with his friends. From a villain standpoint, this doesn't make a lot of sense, since if the Titans were dead, there wouldn't be any other hero in Slade's way, so he could easily have taken over the city. This was played off as his hatred for losing. Still, Slade also acts similarly towards Terra when she becomes afraid on the battlefield. The suit that she wears allows Slade to help her in combat, and he does give the impression of being a decent teacher toward her as well. True, Slade does use the suit to control her, but that's only after she starts having second thoughts on what she's doing. As mentioned, Slade does want control and power. Still, even after he takes over the city, Terra clarifies that Slade had no intention of killing anyone except for the Titans. Adding to this thought, Slade is also a voice of wisdom throughout the show as well. Though he may be a bad guy, he does offer a lot of clarity and information for the team to use in their particular struggles. This is shown when Beast Boy's being the cause of Terra's pain when she doesn't want to remember her old life, and how Raven is dragging her friends into the end of the world prophecy near the end of his days. Speaking of Raven though, this brings to light Slade's purest moment. When the end of the world is upon them, Slade offers a way for the Titans to get Raven back. He does have his own goals in mind for this, but he offers more than enough for the team in response. He gives them a plan of battle, an artifact to help in the fight, watches Robin's back during their journey, and even helps the Titans defeat Trigon when everything is said and done. Slade claims that even he never wished for the fate that befell the world when Trigon began his rule. This has a bigger impact when we consider that Slade was never seen again in the show until the final episode. But even then, to be fair, that was just a robot designed to look like him. Where the robot came from, though, your guess is as good as ours. This next entry is quite a disturbing one, to say the least. Say hello to Nufu and Bob. Since these two star in the same episode and fight for the same cause, we're going to include them together. Aside from offering Beast Boy a moped and being a healthy alternative to meat, there isn't anything else good to say about these two. That being said, their other actions range from petty to downright psychotic. While it is true, false advertising their food is the quickest way to lose customers, and using Bob as a food source is a creepy and gross concept, the act of stealing cows for an energy source for their spaceships definitely is on the minor side of evil doings. Unfortunately, this isn't the worst of their deeds. No, Nufu is so high up on this list due to his malicious intentions for the planet afterward. Apparently, it is Nufu's way to blow up a planet when they've taken everything the edible dictator wants from said planet. Considering the rant that Beast Boy had to listen to from this thing, we can say for sure that the evil intention is clear as freshly made water puddle. If that cause doesn't motivate you to pull out the barbecue sauce and devour this little monster, we honestly don't know what will. Now we're getting to the bottom of the barrel, where villains have gone from minorly bad to downright villainous. To start us off, we have Madame Rouge. Now, she's mentioned to have a very twisted mind, but that's not the only thing about her that's twisted. For one, she can stretch her body in numerous ways to help her gain an advantage in battle. And two, she can even change her appearance to look like another person. This ability came in handy, particularly when she tricked Hotspot into powering down by taking on the appearance of Robin to take out the Fiery Titan. Furthermore, she succeeds in getting a communicator from Robin by making him believe that she's Hotspot, which causes the downfall of the Titans leading up to their final battle. Her cleverness is definitely one that would keep anybody on their toes. Well, except for Jinx. Madame Rouge may have a slight honor system in which she doesn't strike while the enemy has their back turned, but she's in no way a good role model to follow. Jinx had to learn for herself during her quest to join the Brotherhood of Evil. As mentioned earlier, Jinx idolized Madame Rouge and wanted to be just like her. Fortunately, Rouge's attitude towards the young villain proves to be her undoing, as Jinx has had enough of the cruelty from her idol and succeeds in stopping her from capturing Kid Flash. That is most likely where Madame Rouge's bad luck started, as she's eventually taken down by Wildebeest and Hotspot in the final showdown. While she isn't the top villain, as we'll see due to future entries, she's definitely one of the more sinister ones, considering who she takes orders from. Up next on our homicidal agenda, we have Brother Blood. Forget the villain by the same name. This guy is a real control freak. From inside Hive Academy, he quite literally controls the minds of his students and influences their behavior through his teaching methods. This even includes Cyborg when the Titan goes undercover within the school. In fact, Brother Blood develops an unhealthy obsession with the young hero when Cyborg is able to resist the villain's mind control tactics time and time again. This guy went so far as to build a giant machine, inspired by Cyborg's blueprints by the way, to destroy the entire city with an enormous tidal wave. Oh, and obviously Blood used those blueprints to find Cyborg's weaknesses as well. This guy definitely holds grudges, as during the final featured episodes where he takes center stage, Blood takes over Steel City. He captures Steamroller and turns him to the dark side to gather students for the new academy this twisted headmaster plans to create, which happens to be the tower run by the Titans East. Blood also created thousands of cyborg clones to capture the Titans. Once he does succeed, the 5 of the team are placed under his control. Later, when he has no future use for them, Blood planned to experiment with the young heroes to turn them into obedient students who would never question him nor disobey him ever again. You see why this guy's more of a control freak than control freak? The fact that Brother Blood decided to become part robot himself to gain an edge on Cyborg and use this development against him is a rather creepy concept. This becomes more apparent because this ultimately backfires on the Headmaster. He becomes furious and desperate to find the answer behind Cyborg's resistance, especially since his enhanced strength gave him control over Bumblebee, which was an added feature on his part. As far as villains go, this guy's motivation boils down to one simple concept. He doesn't know how to take no for an answer, so he would most likely object to being left out of the top 3 slots. Fortunately, we control the ranking here, so better luck next time, Blood. With the ranking nearly complete, we're now moving down into our final 3. So without further ado, let's jump right into the fray. Now, call it a controversial choice for our bronze medal of villainy, but we have to list Daizo for this spot. Granted, he is a movie-only villain. However, this guy will definitely speak for himself here. To start with, he's supposed to be Japan's chief of police, so naturally he handles the protection of the city without the Titans' help. He claims that even though the heroes are welcome, their crime fighting isn't. This allows the so-called police chief to control the city and mayor in very subtle ways. Furthermore, Daizo deceives the Titans by telling them that Brushogun was not responsible for attacking the city, and sending the warning of a threat to the team as Daizo mentions that the supervillain was just a myth. Though that was clearly a lie, as not only does Brushogun exist, but Daizo uses the super's powers for his own twisted ambitions. This so-called man of justice forces Brushogun to create giant monsters, evil minions, and ink police officers who all obey the evil man's every order, no matter how messed up or cunning the deed is. While trying to have him killed at the same time, sending ink creatures after each Titan to kill, eat, or immobilize them in one way or another, he also enslaves Brushogun against his will, as we see that creating the creatures actually causes Brushogun to scream in pain. What makes Daizo a truly menacing villain is the intelligence this guy possesses. He uses Brushogun to create chaos. Using his position as a police officer, Daizo can stop the crimes and make himself look like a hero to those around him. That's why he's confident in telling Robin that the man will get away with the villainous deeds, even if the man was taken out of the picture. A tiny detail worth noting is that Daizo was even planning to make ink copies of the Titans for his army after he destroyed the originals. Yikes! Thankfully, he made the dumb mistake of jumping into Brushogun's printing machine and turning into a monster as a result. Safe to say that his double-sided life has at last turned to its final page. Our silver medal of villainy goes to the Brain. Quite literally, the brains of the operation. This villain is the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil, which includes Mala, Madame Rouge, and the Evil General. He also takes charge of all of the villains when the time comes to take the Titans out. Not only did this guy create a major headache for the young heroes, but he became a critical problem for the Doom Patrol as well, given that he nearly put Robot Man out of commission for good. This villain captures the rest of the team and renders all of them helpless for 5 months, might I add. If not for Beast Boy's interference, then these do-gooders would have no doubt bit the dust. Despite not having limbs, this villain makes excellent use of his resources and always finds ways to get the materials and information he needs to succeed. The Brain always plans one move ahead of his adversaries. From using guards, giant robots, and even the Titans themselves, he has made an example out of Speedy, Menos, Aqualad, Argent, and biggest of all, Robin himself. What makes the Brain so deserving of this second place spot is his truly menacing mind, coupled with how he executes each plan that he puts into place. Whenever the Brain has a scheme, he seeks to cause as much suffering as possible until he's declared victorious. This is seen when his black hole generator was nearly used on the Doom Patrol and on the Titans' hometown, or when he freezes some of the Titans in front of an unfrozen Robin. Despite his actions, hard to say for a guy who doesn't actually have any limbs, this villain would not hesitate to go against his own word if the situation were to call for it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on whose side you fall on, his brilliant schemes always come up short, and the final fight is no exception. Triggering an explosive device that could have destroyed the whole base, including allies and foes alike, the Brain uses this as a last-ditch effort to win. He cared nothing at all for anyone else's survival but his own. Even though the Brain talked a big game, he still ended up being the butt of everyone's jokes. especially Beast Boys. And finally, the gold medal of evil is rewarded to none other than the tyrant of evil himself, Trigon. His own daughter refers to him as the incarnation of evil, so we can't really argue with that claim. In fact, Raven was created for the sole purpose of allowing Trigon to destroy the entire Earth and everything on its surface, which he actually kinda succeeds in accomplishing. This villain wants nothing but the destruction of everything. His goal is to sit back and literally watch the world burn. Trigon shows no sense of mercy nor care to anyone, not even to his own daughter. This notion goes so deep that this dark being drove Raven to the brink of insanity. This gave her no peace of mind by constantly reminding her that she was born to bring destruction to Earth. Therefore, he breaks her further by destroying her birthplace just to achieve his own goals. And once he's done with her, he thinks of her only as a potential servant to his ambitions, claiming that he is the more powerful father figure. So she has to obey him regardless of what she wants. The twisted thing about Trigon is that he will force anyone to battle with their inner demons just to prove how truly helpless his enemies are on the battlefield. We see this with Cyborg, Beast Boy, and Starfire, who, let's be honest, were getting their butts kicked by their darker counterparts. This tyrant also doesn't mind manipulating others by creating false promises if it means that he can get what he wants. As we witnessed with Slade, Trigon resurrected this dead villain to ensure that Raven would fulfill her birth purpose. So naturally, Trigon does and says whatever's necessary to get the undead fighter to do as he commands. Ultimately though, Trigon does break his promise, surprise surprise, and takes power back from Slade that he originally was given from the resurrection. From the very start, Trigon's confident that absolutely nothing can stop him from achieving his ambitions. This leads to his minions being sent into space to conquer the entire universe. The scariest part of it all? If Robin hadn't inspired Raven to change her destiny, chances are the world as we know it would have been a far bleaker place in the reality of the Teen Titans. And on that note, we've reached the end of this long and twisted journey. Do you agree with our picks? Do you disagree? Was there a villain you thought should have been on this list but wasn't? Let us know about all that in the comments below. And as always, stay wicked.